Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beroe Talks, a series of videos where we discuss about the current market issues and trends by interacting with industry experts. My name is Iyyappan, Research Analyst handling facilities management. Today, we're going to look into the possible procurement concern in regard to the integrated facilities management model, which is also popularly known as the IFM model. But before we proceed with the discussion, for the benefit of the viewers who are relatively new to the term, I'll give a short and simple overview about the model before we discuss it in detail later. IFM model in simple terms means bringing majority of IFM services under one single agency. That is, if implemented fully, it can deliver a single comprehensive solution by bringing a large portfolio under one single service provider. This model's popularity, although it's spread across the different users, majority it's seen among the multinational organizations who have large global and regional real estate portfolio. If you ask anybody in the industry, majority of them are going to strongly advocate in support of the model because it has been believed when we integrate much of the services, there's a huge benefit for the buying organization through cost savings, simplicity of supply base, greater efficiency, and so on. We are not going to go against the thought. In fact, rightly implemented model matching the organization's goal along with the right commitment, tool, knowledge, and learning, we can drive the IFM to the success line. However, this model is not a one-size-fits-all model, and there's a lot of element involved in this model which acts as the critical success factor. So there are chances that things may go wrong, and the element may not come together. So there are chances that issue may come up. So we thought we should explore the other side of the coin and see what are the possible concerns that may come under the way. So we get to know about the pain points and also understand the model in a better manner. And knowing these pain points and the solution that will be discussed with the help of an expert later, we can make a better informed decision. So for the discussion, we have invited someone who has more than 20 years of experience in the industry and have acute knowledge about IFM model, and he's the managing director of Spingate FM consulting firm. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Andrew Potter, who is joining us from England. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine, thank you. My pleasure to join you.
It's a pleasure from our side as well, Andrew. So, Andrew, I gave a short and simple overview about the model with the knowledge that I have. Uh, but you've been in this industry for more than 2 decades. So, why don't you give us the genesis of the model and also mention how is this model being presumed on other organizations and how is the demand for this model with other organizations around the world according to your experience?
I think the reason this model is growing is because organizations are themselves becoming more and more global. So you will have a company thinking, well, my brand is global, my supply chain for other parts of the business is global, our management is global. Why should we have to look at our facilities management in such a way that every country has to do its own thing with all the variances, the cost increases, and the risk that brings? So what companies are wanting now is just a chance to operate all aspects of their business, including support services, centrally. And that's how it's grown. What has been a limit on it until relatively recently is the availability of good suppliers with the capability and maturity to do this in all markets. But we've now got to a situation where there's a number of companies out there with the ability to deliver to multiple territories in a cost-effective and efficient way.
Okay. So so there is a quick demand, a high demand for this model among the organizations around the world, and there is a steady growth for this model also, which we've been analyzing regarding the industry. So let's talk about the concerns with regard to the model. The first and the foremost concern is related to the cost savings. This is a major factor that the IFM model promises to deliver. But when I came across with few procurement managers who stated that the cost savings that has been promised by the suppliers are really not being met. In some instances, even though they can meet the cost savings as an overall global level, they still can't able to meet the numbers at certain geographies, which are really disappointing the local stakeholders there. So, what are your thoughts about this?
I'm afraid this is inevitable. There's nothing you can do to stop this because you've got different specifications, different markets, different maturity levels. And on a local level, you will find some locations where, for whatever reason, and it could be down to inadequate specification, it could be down to an excellent value local supplier, where they will suffer for this. So it can't be avoided, unfortunately. But when it does happen, the factories affected, or the locations affected, where they are making a cost increase, have to be addressed in some kind of sensible way, whether that's by cross-subsidising internally so they don't have an impact on their P&L, or whether it's through demonstrating to them other savings or other benefits. So the benefits of reduced risk, increased service levels, greater compliance, or whether it's simply down to a case of saying, well, it's an executive decision. This is what we're doing for the greater good of the company. There's a lot can happen, but unfortunately you will never avoid the situation that there will be different benefits levels for different locations.
Okay, right. So this is leading to another question. As you're saying, it is inevitable. I mean, how to set the right expectation when it comes to cost savings? I mean, is it really wise to compare between different locations when you evaluate a performance, or is it really wise to compare between other organizations who are succeeding in the contract? So, how to go about to setting the right expectations, and is it really wise to compare? Please give us your thoughts about it.
I think you can compare, but you have to make sure that the comparison is a fair comparison. So, I mean, obviously the starting point normally would be to make sure that the baseline costing is correct and is accurate, because that's what you're measuring against. So effectively, when you do a comparison, it will be fair and like for like. So you aren't comparing different things to different locations. You also have to consider cost of living.
Okay.
You have to consider market maturity, so that when you are doing a saving, it's a realistic saving that you are predicting.
Okay.
I think in terms of how that saving will manifest itself at the various locations and the expectations around that, you have to be honest.
Okay.
If it's a big location which is obviously inefficient, you're going to get a bigger saving than a very small location which is efficient.
Okay.
So I think it's a matter of being honest with people, telling your client from day one that you cannot expect uniform savings,
Okay.
and then making sure that the savings and the communication and the messaging of them is managed throughout the process. I think there is, with some clients, unfortunately, there is an expectation they will get a very consistent saving level everywhere, but life doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
You'll
right.
typically find some locations the saving is very high, others there'll be either no saving, or as you said earlier with the example, there will be a potential cost increase.
True. I mean, what he's saying makes complete sense, because there are chances that certain geographies might have achieved a certain saturation point where there is no space for the current supplier to utilize and input more optimization and achieve better savings that they could achieve in probably a less matured geography where there is a lot of space for them to show their skills. It makes complete sense. But this is leading to another question. I mean, this concern is with regard to the supplier. So when I spoke to suppliers about how they, I mean, why can't they achieve cost savings the same number in certain geographies? Even though the points shared was there is no such expectation that can be met in every geographies uniformly. The major concern that I saw was that the increasing labor wage. I mean, this being a labor-intense service industry, the increasing minimum labor wages in certain geographies is one of the major hurdles the suppliers are facing. I mean, even in Europe, recently I came across that Germany is facing a very rapid increase in labor wages. So one of the supplier there pointed out that this is a major concern in this geography. So my question is, how can a buyer handle such a situation? I mean, is there any contractual terms or strategies in place that the buyer can utilize in order to immune them from such external factors? Or, I mean, how can we go about this?
You've hit on a very good point here that wage rates are increasing, and labour supply is a big issue,
Yep.
especially in a facilities management where a lot of the labour you would purchase is very much minimum wage labour.
Okay.
And to an extent, the issues have been mitigated by the opening of labour markets and the ability for staff to move from one country to another.
Okay.
But it's a very important issue you've got there. The important thing is people have to accept there will be an input cost increase
Okay.
as wage rates rise. For example, in the UK, it's actually legally stated what the increase will be in the national minimum wage,
Okay.
or the living wage as it is now, over the next couple of years. So I think, how can a buyer mitigate this? I think the short answer is, again, openness and honesty. You have two approaches. One is to say, fix the cost for this time, and you, Mr. Supplier, you will build the cost of increased labour charges within your bid and take the risk. And typically what this means is supplier margin will be a little larger in year one, that rate in year two, and smaller in year three. The alternative being that we can simply say it will be done at this basis annually using a published indices. So whether it's something such as the GDP deflator, our retail price index, consumer price index, or anything that suits both parties in the agreement, there is a rationale for understanding what the increase will be and the basis for calculating it.
Okay.
And as a buyer, what you can do then is say, well, based on past experience and government forecasts, we expect the increase per annum to be this.
Okay.
So you have the ability to predict what most of the increase should be.
Okay.
The only difference on this will be where legislation comes in, which isn't expected and adds a cost that couldn't be realistically foreseen by the service provider.
Okay.
I mean, my preferred approach in this is to say, give me your price for the years of the contract, and that will include the wage increases for subsequent years beyond year one in there. So there is certainty for budgeting going forward.
Okay, so my understanding is that doing a proper research on the wage rates and knowing the forecast about whether they'll be increasing or decreasing, and having the right relationship with the supplier can be an opportunity for us to settle things beforehand, even before signing up the contract. Is my understanding right, Mr. Porter?
Yes, it is. And I think what we have to remember is that the suppliers themselves have great knowledge
Okay.
of the markets in various countries and even locations within countries, because you can have huge variations within the same country. And it's important for a buyer to consider that local knowledge and how they can use that to their advantage during the process, so that there's less likelihood of surprises for the ultimate client and the people who will receive the service.
Okay, true. Thank you, Potter. I think that clears up, and it's right on the head. So the next concern is related to the service quality. I mean, I think this is one of the major topic that we have to discuss, is because majority of the global service providers, or any service provider who promises to deliver IFM, are majorly subcontracting their services in locations, especially where they do not have a strong presence. So there are situations which have come up where the service quality is not met at certain sites by the subcontractor, which is leading to a varied service outcome. So how can a buyer deal with such a situation without disrupting the operations? How can we go about this?
The key answer to this is by allocating responsibility correctly. So what you need to do is make sure you have a contract with the main contractor that says, with subcontracting, you are fully responsible.
Okay.
So if that subcontractor does not deliver, you are then in a situation where you are responsible. You will have the effect on not meeting KPIs, you will have the effect on any abatement regime in place, and you will suffer from that.
Okay.
So it's very much a case of passing that responsibility to the main supplier. So if they are using a subcontractor, you as a client, as a buyer, would treat that subcontractor in just the same way as you would treat the main supplier. And to reinforce this, what you can do is by having the contract written in such a way that you have alternatives. And whether that's step-in rights if the quality of the contract doesn't meet certain levels, whether it's termination of either the local contract or the master contract, you have the ability to say, in this particular territory, this subcontractor is not delivering to the right standard. It is your fault, main contractor. Sort it or you lose some or all of the contract. And that ultimate sanction can be very important. But to do that, you obviously need the right legal framework in place.
Okay.
And in my experience, what I found most effective is to have a master services agreement, which is set up in the client's home territory, with then local service agreements set up around the world in the various countries where these services to be delivered, which based on the master agreement, but have those variations that are absolutely essential to both the facilities that are being managed and the local legislation. But of course, you do have to be careful that local management organisations from the client side don't try and tweak the local service agreement to get a different specification for no genuine business need.
Okay. I think my understanding from what he's saying is define the services properly so the supplier knows what he has to deliver in each location, and never tweak the contractual term from MSA to LSA. It should be consistent, and the definition that has been provided must be delivered, and it should be clearly mentioned in the contract, so the supplier needs to be questioned when he goes against the terms. Am I right, Mr. Potter?
Yes, you're right, but also that when it's measured service quality, it's measured consistently everywhere, and that the main contractor has full responsibility for it being met.
Okay, right. So talking about contractual terms, there's one more concern that we came across. It is, I think we can wrap it up after this question. The contractual terms are not being strictly followed at certain local sites. So as you said, even though we define it properly, there are issues where the service providers are not meeting, not complying with the contractual term at certain sites. It may be probably because they are involving too much of subcontractors. My understanding is that. So, how should a buyer deal with such a situation and make sure there is a uniform compliance across a lot of sites, especially when there is a lot of sites involved around the world? Adding to this question, I have one more question, which I think is a huge topic to cover, but still, if you can, please mention a few points regarding this. When we are having a large contract, how should a buyer manage it very efficiently, especially when there is a combination of both matured and developing geographies? Give us your opinion about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important issue. I think a lot of it goes down to making sure that you pick the right main contractor. So it's not just about picking somebody based on their technical ability for facilities management services, but about their management ability. So for example, even when I started procurement process at pre-qualification stage, there will be questions in there about how do you manage subcontractors? What is your level of commitment and depth in certain territories? So the understanding goes from there. So you pick a contractor who has the right level of knowledge and maturity to deliver what you want, where you want it. My personal view is it doesn't really matter whether they self-deliver or subcontract, but if they are subcontracting, they must have an organisation set up to do subcontracting, which obviously is very different from self-delivery. So in terms of getting consistency at locations, the important thing is that the management information that comes back, where you're measuring performance against certain quality criteria, the KPIs, is in a consistent format. So you can do like-for-like measurement from each country. And it then becomes very apparent if certain countries aren't delivering to the standard you need them to. And of course, the first thing is once you've identified an issue, that gives you the opportunity to resolve it. You can ask the questions, why is this not happening? Is there a specific reason? Is it client-led? Is it supplier-led, the reasoning? But you can then, from that, determine the reasons, and from the reasons, obviously develop a plan to resolve it. But going back to my previous point, the important thing is that you have the right contractual arrangement in place that does give you sanction of if there is not delivery in one country, no matter whether it's large, whether it's small, whether it's mature or immature, the right exists to replace the contractor in that country. And in one instance we've had recently, fail in one country, you could lose the contract everywhere. Because what that does is it incentivizes the main contractor to get it right everywhere. Because even in the smallest country, failing there could mean they lose everything.
Okay.
And that would have huge issues in terms of obviously business loss, but also reputational risk. No supplier wants to be seen to be losing good contracts.
Okay. So it is always good to set a clear expectation and setting the clear contractual terms with regards to the supplier. So we tend to understand. So when we understand the overall thing as a clear view, we get an idea of how to react when something goes wrong. So
Absolutely.
so the points to remember here is in regards to cost savings, it is always right to have a right expectations, having a clear expectation when it comes to cost savings, having a proper research on the expectations and the services that has been involved and the culture and other factors that may affect the savings. It's always good to have a proper research on everything before we setting an expectation. And when it comes to contractual terms, it is always good to have a proper setup and having a consistent with regards to the MSA and LSA and making sure it is being strictly followed. For that, we have to define what it means for us when it comes to services. So the supplier gets an idea and he also will also stick to the definition in each location. By that, we can achieve a consistent when it comes to service quality. Apart from what we spoke about today, other thing is when it comes to IFM, the number one priority should be the people. So when we are designing the model and the contract, it is always good to set the expectation, and we have to design the service in a way that the services that we delivered will directly impact the experience for the employees. So all the expectation without comparing with other organizations, setting the right designing for an IFM model is always necessary. And after that, overlooking culture and operational behavior from different geographies is being very predominant, which I think is very wrong, because these plays a very critical factor when it comes to managing the overall contract. So it is always good to have a proper research on the culture and all the and having a forecast about the wages and external factors when we are even running the IFM contract. It will really be useful for us to manage it and drive it to the success line. So am I right, Mr. Porter? Would you like to add on a few points?
I think you're absolutely right with that. I think the other key thing is, though, that a client organization needs to recognize that IFM is a very different way of working to in-country smaller contracts. And they do need to set up a robust management team to make sure that the contract is properly managed.
Okay.
And people don't slip into their old ways in country. I think once they've done that, once they've got the right management information showing how the suppliers are responding, then by working with the master supplier, there is no reason why this shouldn't give the savings, the risk, and the quality benefits that these contracts can deliver and regularly do.
True. So I think we have discussed about the three major factors that may become a issue. We have discussed about cost savings, we have discussed about quality, service quality, and we have also talked about the contractual term, how to maintain it in uniformly. I think by this we can wrap it up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Andrew. If you have any doubts or queries, you can always contact us at info@beroeinc.com. Also, you can also drop an email to me. It's iyyappan.c@beroeinc.com. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.